Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. So we're very excited. This is our first Masterclass of the year here in the Centre for Creative Technologies. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Con, and I'm the director of the centre. Myself and David do all the fun stuff here, along with amazing PhD students and various other people. So yeah, we're really excited. Meaghan is over from Virginia Tech, the first of two visiting researchers to come from Virginia Tech this semester. And so, as well as giving the masterclass, she's been doing lots of stuff with students, but also is here to build collaborations with the aim of developing a project that will be exhibited at Ulca Visual Arts Festival in 2026. All going well, be back November next year. And so, yeah, excited to hear about my work, obviously, around building immersive experiences inspired by poetry.
And so if y'all have ideas too, please reach out either while we're here or later. So I figured I'd give just a quick background. So I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, like middle of the country, stayed in the middle for a little while, went to University of Illinois at Champaign for undergraduate. And right out of school, got headhunted and went to Las Vegas, which I hadn't expected. I'd worked for an architecture and design firm while I was out there, doing a lot of things like a logo that's on a building, and they sort of truncated the logo, but that's okay, and textile designs, and did a 128-foot mural based on some retro posters, which is now a hash house a go-go, which is a bummer. And then after living in Las Vegas, I knew I had wanted to go back to teach. So I ended up at Virginia Commonwealth University, which is in Richmond, Virginia, not this side of the pond. But I did many things while there, one of which was I started mailing postcards to strangers. I would individually collage or draw or paint things and mail them off to different people. So I'd scan them in, do different exhibits of them and so forth. But after graduate school, I landed at Virginia Tech. So I've been there now 15 years. My first 3 years were spent running a student-run, faculty-led graphic design agency, basically giving people an opportunity, or students an opportunity, to work with clients, but still in the safety of the classroom. Last year, Jessica Meharry, who's out of Chicago, and I had finally finished our book, Working with Design Clients, which was really about how you might be running a design studio, also kind of thinking about people who might be going off and freelancing, that early, if you're not used to working with clients, how do you approach it? But in general, it's really about how important experiential learning is as part of that process. So the more of those opportunities I could give my students, the better. Also, those connections to industry and community, and that the main aim of this is also providing those empowerment chances. And I just finished this book with my collaborators, Anne H. Berry and Rebecca Tegmeyer, and I believe over 30 contributors to the whole thing. So this is about guiding principles for inclusive design values. And this kind of came out of those COVID years. Anne Berry and Rebecca Tegmeyer and I had facilitated a series of conversations with other folks, and it's called AIJ, but the design educators community, about what's our value as educators in online teaching in these times. And so there was also very influential in 2020, the murder of George Floyd. And so we're having students in our classrooms that are hearing protests outside their door. We can't even be there face to face. So what are we offering them that say, like, lynda.com online tutorials isn't? So we came up with over 100 educators from around the world, a series of pledge items. And this is sort of modified to be beyond just for design educators, but also for design practitioners, but thinking about being anti-racist, upholding all design histories, specifically not just being Bauhaus-centric. I think that's something a lot of designers in the US sort of have, that modernist Bauhaus aesthetic, which is not bad, but making sure that you have many different views and not just one view. Distributing knowledge, so talking to people, sharing things, writing books, going to conferences, like however you want to be sharing those ideas, continue to do it, and demonstrating the impact of those actions. and creating community and sharing culture in different ways. So yay for this partnership. And also promoting healthy life experiences. When we originally wrote it, it was just promoting healthy student life experiences. And then we had all these stressed out faculty who were overextending themselves trying to help. So everyone should be trying to be healthy in different ways. And because I'm a crazy person, I'm working on a third book, and then I think I'm done with books, but with these wonderful women, Mina Khalili and Robin Landa. So this is almost the opposite of my first book. So it's how experimentation enhances creativity, but it's almost like, what do you, when you're using design without a client? So we've explored the how you're working with clients, but now there's all these things you can unpack, like personal identity explorations, like better understanding, etc. And I'm like a regular person designer as well. So doing a lot of, freelance or side hustles kinds of things, a lot of logo designs, conference brandings, things like that, websites. Some of my clients are quite fun. This is not necessarily paying your mortgage, but giving you beer money with beer packaging. So I do all of the label designs for a local brewery, and they let me have quite a bit of fun with it, I would say. And I'll also try to embrace new technologies with work that I'm doing. So the brewery could care less about augmented reality, but I was wanting to learn how to use Aero, which is now defunct because Adobe. But so what I did was take the package design that I'd done for them and then rebuild it using an augmented reality platform. And so just kind of, using existing clients and just having more fun with it. Because I always find it's easier to learn technologies when you have a project that you're applying it with. Virginia Tech has laser cutters, and before I had a child, I used to love sending laser cut holiday cards for people, and I'd make chocolate and different kinds of things. And I said that the thing that went away when I had a child was individually laser cut holiday cards. So this is my beautiful child. So she's waving to all of you, but other things that I'll do for fun. I made this book that we kind of call Wings and Things, or the Flat Book. The idea being that each page is a animal or creature that can flap its wings. So you're kind of interacting with the form of the book itself. Also do a lot of poster work. I've been invited to be a part of the Tolerance Project. So this was my contribution to that. And so the aim of that project is that they invite people, every time it goes to a different country, they invite a designer from that country to write or make a poster using their native language. So the collection has a bunch of different designers from all around the world. And the idea of using the word tolerance rather than even acceptance or inclusion or something like that is that tolerance is often the first step. And there's so many places in the world where people just even want that basic human right of tolerance for different things. And so mine was meant to sort of look ornamentally like tolerance, but if you look in here, there's a bunch of secret gender identities and things. So mahaha. I was also invited to submit for the women's rights or humans rights. So for this particular poster, I had made this when I was having a conversation with my friend Elham. So she's from Iran, but living in the States. And when there were the protests in Iran about women not being able to show their hair, or people cutting their hair and exposing it and being murdered or jailed and all sorts of things, I was like, what can I do to support you? Because she was really struggling, and she's like, talk about it. So here I am talking about it. She's like, make a poster. So she's like, it's a little bit different than certain things where people in Iran can't always speak for themselves. So it's good to be speaking about these things, drawing attention to these issues. So I took my hair and created the letter formed Women, Life, Freedom, which is sort of the mantra of that movement. And this was, I guess, the last poster project I'll talk about before kind of switching gears into these immersive narratives. It was for part of a poster traveling exhibit called Ongoing Matter, which is Design, Democracy, and the Mueller Report, which was trying to trick people into reading the Mueller report by making fun posters. So the Mueller report is very boring. I read it once, or I skimmed it if we're being honest. But I went through it while I was coming up with this, or finding different content for it. And the part that I really liked was the reference to a lot of things were redacted, but the no person in this country is so high that he is above the law. I redacted it for, but we can figure that out. So, but then again, playing with, in this case, Artivive, which is a really lovely AR platform. And then they put up a stupid paywall that is ticking me off because they should have a better educational discount. So if you're with Artivive, I love you. You're my favorite product. Make it cheaper and more affordable. So switching gears into kind of immersive spaces. So I'll have a few different projects I'm talking about, and then at the end of it, we'll kind of get into a little bit of creative brainstorming if you're up for it. So the first one is Shakespeare's Garden. So all of the projects, well, not all, but most of the projects I'm showing you are in this space that they call the Cube. So it's a 4-story black box theater with 140 speakers, which enables it to have locational audio. And sometimes they'll bring in additional speakers and so forth. So for this first project, what we did, my role as graphic designer was doing the motion graphics. So, and this is also a funny story of collaboration. I'm just happened to be in the same building as the theater folks. And Amanda Nelson is in theater down the hall. I was coming back from the bathroom, which is at the other side. And she was like, hey, would you ever want to do something with typographic projection? And I was like, sure. And this collaboration was born. But so what we ended up doing is student actors recorded Shakespearean sonnets, soliloquies, and scenes. And so we put literal spotlights, but there's also spotlight speakers that you can't see. So if you're in that spotlight, you can hear that particular sonnet, soliloquy, or scene. And if you step outside of it, you can no longer hear it. So that's a pretty cool just technology. So obviously kind of
the next series with a wand.
They also had these, kind of soundscapes. So there'd be like a babbling brook kind of going along certain speakers or a bird flying by. And sound person. This was not my contribution to the project, but Charles Nichols is lovely. And so that's him essentially like syncing each audio component to the different speakers. And then we were inspired by different things. So research, I think, is always a great part of any project, like looking at these Renaissance gardens. So like when we're thinking about the placement of the scrims, how might that have some sort of, meandering Shakespearean garden? And then I was looking at different typefaces that would have been used in Shakespeare's life. So Garamond's been around since 1450, so maybe he was seeing it in his life. So I thought that was a good jumping off point, seeing the student actors. And for the first version, I was like, I'm gonna just use my own images. And so I did. And the idea behind the different poems is that both the audio soundscapes and the visuals were kind of taking you through the seasons. So this first one was more warm summer, and it was also kind of a funny, the 2 sonnets that they put together. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. Shall I compare thee to a summer day? Coral is far more red than her than her lips red, like kind of insulting you and then complimenting you. So they did some sort of funny things on that end. Then you get into the kind of cooler rains. And then the last one is more of a balcony scene where you're blowing in on the wind. And then thinking even about things like, okay, instead of just having a still sign, what if the thing on the TV outside the auditorium also has subtle animation? And I kind of love that theater people get so into it. They're like lying on the floor, immersing themselves to really hear it. And we've got to take it to a couple different places. So I'm not going to make you watch a VT News thing too much, but basically we got to take this to a torpedo factory. I also, having talked to someone else, it's not literally a torpedo factory anymore. It used to be a torpedo factory. Now it is an arts center. And so we got to kind of reimagine it for another space. And we also took it to the Taubman Museum, which is in a city about 45 minutes away from us. So kind of for that, making new scenes, and we only had 2 weeks. So these are, pretty fast. And all of these things are kind of strange too, when you're like, oh, the technology's better, I think it's better now. So, and we had the little blobby things pulling from here to kind of pull you into the spaces. So we'd also done with this what I consider a really terrible virtual reality project. We worked with a great group, the Aries Lab, I love them, and they did the best ever, but because it was really an afterthought, it wasn't all that great, right? Like you could do anything you want in this virtual space, and we have some rectangles. And so I was like, yes, that was like a recapturing of what we did in the space, but it wouldn't be, you know, if I was really thinking of from scratch, what would the ideal virtual reality Shakespearean experience be? It wouldn't be rectangles. So for this project, Forgetfulness, we did think about what was, for starters, just a virtual reality project. But that was where we were thinking about it from the onset. So you'll see a couple of these projects were like, what else could we do with it? Which is also fun, you know, getting as much leverage out of something. But also if you're thinking about possibilities from the start, it's kind of better too. So this project was done with Zach Durr, who's a creative technologist who built the virtual space in Unity. And that cube space that I showed you, the physical room, they basically have that in VR. So it's really cool because you don't run into walls. Like the first time I put on a VR headset, I was like tripping over my couch, and yeah, it's not ideal. And so when you have it mapped to a room, it's a very safe virtual space, and you can kind of walk for further distances and so forth. But this poem, Mobius Strip Forgetfulness, is by Denise Duhamel. And so her intention for this is that you print this out and then you like twist it and tape it back together, and it creates a Mobius strip or sort of infinity loop. And it's meant to be a non-linear poem, meaning you could start at any point in it. And she actually wanted some intentional misreadings of it. So, you know, this is kind of what we're starting to see in that virtual space is you're having it be up all around you. But I was also thinking about just the functionality of VR, right? So the rules of typography change in those. So you don't want to do things like really thin type because it won't show up as well. You also, for print, you want kind of longer lines so you don't have to make your eyes tired from reading back and forth too much, but you might not even be able to get to see it if you're in a VR headset. Or kind of thinking about some of the other principles that you might pull from something like Google Material Design. Also, if you're doing stuff in VR spaces, Google and Apple now have a little bit more resources available than they used to. But so thinking about, you know, what you want to be conveying in that. And in essence, the main thing on those things, so like Google Cardboard, when they had it, they're like, you don't want people to get motion sick, right? And so, but they also explained that the main thing about that is motion sickness is caused by the disparity between what feels and what someone expects to feel. So you're just kind of trying to limit that. So that's some of the things that I wanted people to be considering, or what I was considering when I was focusing on this project. And so this was a poem about Alzheimer's disease. And so again, kind of thinking about the fading in and out, like the thinking about memory, but you still want to not do it too much because you want people to be able to read it. And then, yeah, EcoBookvic, a creative technologist in music, was creating some of these sort of soundscapes that you'd hear in the VR headset. So we had wrist trackers on and so forth. So you could tell where you were in the poem, but also we could track what moments people might have an emotional response, like if their heart rate went up or if they had more perspiration, et cetera. But that also enabled us to like change the audio based on the location of the poem. So as I said, I kind of paced my animations a little bit slower because you're also dealing with these like magical backgrounds and so forth. So you don't want that to be crazy. So you kind of have to slow it down because of other things. So on the next few slides, like this was a very slow, which was a weird, I was like, why does everything gotta be fast? But Instagram promo video I had made for it. And as I show this and a couple images or videos from it, I'll read part of the poem. So she tries to pee in the trash can, but misses. She puts her socks over her shoes. She wears all of her necklaces at once. She has another bruise. She hides her rings in the toaster slots. She shoves the toast in the VCR. She holds the Chili's menu upside down. She tries to eat an acorn. She likes to eat canned frosting. She is small and curled upon the bed. She can't smell anything good or bad. She uses her lipstick as eyeshadow. She loses her favorite crucifix. She carries an empty pocketbook. She doesn't recognize the pudding. She doesn't recognize her son. She wears a baseball cap she stole from another Alzheimer's patient, and she turns on the stove to watch the flames. She wears her sweater as a hat. She turns on the stove to touch the blue flowers, tries to eat a checker, and then a domino. So the other thing that was nice about being able to track people in this space is you see these kind of blue avatar things. I was joking around and that I had a really terrible experience because we forgot to tell the other person that if you see a blue blobby thing, it's another person. And so when I was in this space, they were like trying to touch me. And so it's just like running away from the other person the whole time. So you gotta give your participants full instructions. Just sort of the still. So I also like thinking about how something might translate in a poster versus a VR versus a social promotion. The next project I'll talk about is Pose Shadows. And so in that same cube space, they have this, or had this 360-degree scrim. So it was these curved screens with 4 projectors that projection mapped onto them, which is what you see at the top half. And at the bottom, you see these things called crankies, which is an old form of Appalachian storytelling, in which there'd be a painted or illustrated scroll that you would unwind as you would tell a story or sing a song. So our idea was kind of combining this new technology and this old technology as a way of telling it. So my role was, again, to do the motion graphics, and I illustrated, and I got these long Japanese style sketchbooks so I could sketch them all. I made the mistake of having folds though, because I had to Photoshop out every one of those dang folds. But then it kind of came together like this, and you can kind of see people in the space. And again, worked with School of Performing Arts to have students record Poe. And then Tanner Up the Grove in this case it was really campy and delightful, like the beating heart. We got a really big speaker. And on the outside of this, before you walked in, students had recorded The Raven. So this was another one where we're like, hey, what else can we do with it? So these are your freebies for the day. So, and take one, pass it along. So we worked again with this Aries group, which was, students that might be in computer scientists, or engineering or creative technologies. And they built this app in Unity, and it's available for free from the App Store. And I can show you after this if anyone wants me to demo it. But basically, we're like, okay, we already have this illustration. How could we turn this into a book? And I'm also, Scott Fralin from the library also delightfully built the whole thing into an actual cranky. So again, kind of new tech, old tech, and having fun with those. I also like this because even if you don't download the app, it works like a regular book that you can read. So you don't necessarily have to get the app for it to work. There are some things like it has to be, so we did image recognition for it rather than having a QR code on every single page. So what it's doing is scanning that image, and you kind of do have to align it, but then there's animations and audio that appears. Ideally, we'd also be extending it to have the recordings from the actors and so forth, but we've done some other things like working with the Future House. We participated in the solar decathlon. They actually came in first place, I believe, in 2020 for that. And so my role was to oversee a team of students that worked on the branding, and we did websites, but there's also things like, oh, you need a recipe app because based on what you have in your kitchen, it might suggest recipes, or what's the visual interface design look like on different sorts of things. So you have these interactive panels that are happening, or you might have a picture-in-picture display showing your cookies, or there'd be timers in the microwave that could hear how far apart the pops of the popcorn were and automatically stop. So your popcorn is always the perfect popcorn. So you would know what's available. in your fridge, telling you what you'd have at your disposal. The bathroom's actually one of the coolest parts of it because it was all about aging in place. So there'd be things like it could keep track of your weight for health management, but also it could detect falls. So if you fell, the floor sensors would be able to detect that. So it kind of enables people to stay in their homes longer. But my role for that was to oversee the design of a visual interface design prototype to accompany that. So it was working with students on, all right, what's the brand of this whole thing? Like, are you having these natural interactions? And again, don't worry, it's Fahrenheit. So like it's a reasonable temperature for home. But are you having it feel warmer when it goes to warm? And are you turning it down? So thinking about how you might already be interacting with something like a thermostat. So it both work on an app, and then they had little wall panels in each, or even things like icon designs. Because the home has things like a drone delivery hatch, there wasn't a default drone delivery hatch icon. So like coming up with a unified icon system and different things and how it kind of came together. Other sorts of projects. So we've also worked with the NASA Suits competition. So in this one, we got to go to the Johnson Space Center a few years back, where we competed against other teams. But the secret is they just like, it was like everybody wins. Like if you're there, that's, you won. But we were exploring, thinking about how you might come up with the visual interface design for an astronaut. So like astronaut gloves are really, like imagine having snow gloves on and like trying to do a lot. And so what they actually do right now is they have this spiral bound little booklet with instructions on their arm. And so they're like, what if there was a visual interface design that helped control it? So we had this idea that you could switch between body locked mode, meaning you could like kind of turn your eyes. I realize my font's messed up and that's bothering me. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. So these would kind of be off to the side. So you're keeping everything as clear as possible because you can imagine you're floating around in space. You want to be able to see as much as you possibly can, but that you could be like pulling something in from the side. So also like the typeface that we used was To Go, which was like actually designed for the Microsoft HoloLens to be the most legible. And so thinking about those different things where you'd be able to do that, or like if you looked down, you could be getting these quick instructions and working with other students who are developing the sort of graphics that would quickly show you. And the last project and kind of the main thing that I wanted to talk to you all about today is this Nikki Giovanni Immersive Experience. So Nikki Giovanni is an incredible poet. She also taught at Virginia Tech for many years. Unfortunately, she passed away last December, but before her passing, we had worked with both her and her widow to get her approval on developing an immersive experience, specifically, originally at least, for the Cube at Virginia Tech. So taking some of her poetry and then working with both people designing soundscapes and motion graphic artists and so forth to develop these different immersive experiences. And there's different things too. So there's multiple reasons for wanting to do this. One is her poetry is beautiful. She means a lot, I think, to both the world and Virginia Tech specifically. But also if you think about different types of learners, right? So some people are visual, some people are auditory, some people might have some sort of impairment. So if you have these like multi-sensory environments, that can be really good, but it's also great for getting people to just spend time with the work that might not have otherwise. So we launched 2 poems of hers, Ego Tripping and Nikki Rosa, which were in conjunction with the sort of public memorial event that was held for her last June. And so here's what we were designing for in this case. So I was like, what is probably similar? This room's probably a little bit bigger, but like it was 17 feet by 17 feet by 17 feet. Sorry, I'm using feet. There's a person you can kind of see. It's like 2 people tall. Somebody was, well, actually my friend in the States was teasing me when I said it's about 2 people tall. He's like, you do anything to avoid the metric system. I was like, yeah, so it's about 2 people tall. But so kind of showing you the scale of it, it still has the audio where you can do the soundscape, for those of you that care, it's like rear projected on all of these. So it's nice because people can walk right up to it and not have any interference there. So we also did embodied motion for it. So this is Brittany Harris, who teaches in the School of Performing Arts. And this is in a very similar room at Virginia Tech. We did motion capture, so you can see like those little reflective balls on her. So she's in a motion capture suit. The hardest part to capture is probably the fingers, just because there's so much detail that happens there. But then Trevor Finney has taken what she's done and brought it in to, and then worked on kind of skinning it in a way. And my role, so for ego tripping, I did all of the visuals and motion graphics, but then Trevor put her kind of into the experience on top of that. That's Trevor. That's us calibrating things. That's what the software looks like when you're playing with stuff. That's me saying the colors are wrong. And then it kind of comes together, sort of seeing people in the space. And then I think just
Was born in the Congo.
I was born
Imagine
in the
it on 3 walls.
Was born in the Congo.
I walked to the Fertile Crescent and built the Sphinx. I designed a pyramid so tough that a star that only glows every 100 years falls into the center, giving divine, perfect light.
I am bad. I am bad.
I am mad. I sat on the throne drinking nectar with Allah. I got hot and sent an ice age to Europe to cool my thirst. My oldest daughter is Nefertiti. The tears from my birth pains created the Nile.
I am a beautiful woman.
I am a beautiful woman.
I gazed on the forests and burned out the Sahara Desert with a packet of goat meat and a change of clothes. I parted in 2 hours. I'm a gazelle. So swift, so swift, so swift.
So swift, you can't catch me.
For a birthday present when he was 3, I gave my son gave me Rome for Mother's Day. My strength flows ever on.
My strength flows ever
We
on.
also had
Ever on. My son Noah built
Giovanni's voice
to proudly at the helm
points
of
of
the
her life, and so you hear Nikki's voice.
I turned
and you
myself
hear
into
Nikki's voice,
myself,
but it's always her voice.
then intone my loving name. All praises.
All praises,
I am the
all
one who
praises.
can say.
I am the one who can say. I sow diamonds in my backyard. My bowels deliver uranium. The filings from my fingernails are semi-precious jewels.
On the trip north, I caught a cold in my nose, giving oil to the air. I am so hip, even my errors are correct. I sailed west to reach east and had to round off the earth as I went. The hair from my head thinned, the nose was laid across 3 continents.
I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal.
I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. I cannot be comprehended except by my permission.
I
mean, I
am
can fly like a dove. Yes.
Brittany, who did the motion capture, also had sort of spliced her voice together in different ways, and Charles Nichols did this audio soundscape that you hear in the background. And he really was working with like where you'd be hearing it from as well. So this is not, you know, a full reproduction of those kinds of things. And then, so I've been working on trying to tie them together. So Nikki Rosa's the other poem we did for the initial, but do you have some sort of similarity in that opening slide that makes it feel like a more cohesive experience as you're going through these different things? And so I was like, I guess I can just point to it like, this is my student Demetria. So for the rest of this poem, she had developed the visuals. I sort of did a little bit of additional research on redlining. So a big part of what Nikki Rosa was about is about redlining, which was the redrawing of housing maps to try to intentionally keep segregation or to drive up or down housing prices based on those markets. So that's kind of the underlying theme. So Demetria had made these photoshopped scenes, and then I took it into After Effects and animated, and it's a little bit shorter.
Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're Black.
Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're Black. Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're Black. You always remember things like living in woodlot with no indoor toilet.
And if you become famous or something, they never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself.
And how good the water felt when you got your bath from one of those big tubs that folk in Chicago barbecue in. And somehow when you talk about home,
And somehow, when you talk about home, It never gets across how much you understood their feelings as the whole family attended meetings about Hollydale.
And even though you remember, your biographers never understand your father's pain as he sells his stock. And another thing goes.
And though you're poor, it isn't poverty that concerns you. And though they fought a lot, it isn't your father's drinking that makes any difference, but only that everybody is together.
But only that everybody is together. And you and your sister have happy birthdays and very good Christmases. And I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they never understand black love is black wealth.
Black love is black wealth. And they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy.
Mona is also really lovely. So Nikki's widow was present and the student got to meet her. So that was really a joyful moment. Here's the full credit. Like, as you can imagine on something like that, there's quite a few people that are working hard. And thank you to everyone who had like images and things that we used or the avatar. So we've been working on some other pieces. So we're almost going to play around with a similar, like, what would we be doing if we were going to be doing something like this? And if you don't like the prompt of Nikki Giovanni, you can just make whatever the heck you want with your time today, or you can leave, because this is not a forced requirement for many of you. But so there's another poem called Still Life with Apron. And I had the idea for this one, and I'm not actually making the visuals, my students are working on this, but I was like, what if, since it's already kind of like a room, what if we built like essentially a 3-walled room of a kitchen scene? And then we're having different environments. So this is me being like, this is what could be happening with my 8,000 sticky notes. So, is an oven door going to open? So you're kind of just existing in the space rather than magically transporting people to different scenes. This one's one Trevor's working on. So it's about allowables. It's actually a really beautiful poem, but it's basically she kills a spider and she says like, but I don't think I'm allowed to kill something just because I'm frightened. So really a lovely metaphor. And then the other pieces there, so we're working on one called Quilts. And so that one we're also going to use the motion capture studio, and Brittany's going to work with some of her students and have multiple people doing it. And Trevor's also working on the poem Leaves. But so for Quilts, I did a stop motion of me
Some folk
actually.
think the blues is a song
That felt like
or a way of singing.
so,
But
and
the
this is
blues is history, a way of telling how we got here and who sent us.
so slow.
The blues may talk about my man or my woman who left me or took my.
Okay, that was about as far as I got with that animation anyway. So Dimitri and I are kind of working in collaboration. I think it's about 50-50 on the visuals on that one. So, and then the quilts one, kind of figuring out, we'll have a sort of quilt as a base and the little figures can kind of jump across the squares, thinking about things like traditional Appalachian quilts and so forth. And yeah, all that. So that was it for the talkie part before workshop part. So do you want to break before I'm like, here's the mirror link?
Yeah, well, thanks, man. That was
Oh,
very,
thank